All right, today we're going to put on our financial detective hats. We've got a case file here for a company called Bombay Super Hybrid Seeds, and our mission? To figure out the story that's hiding inside all these numbers.
Now I get it. When you first crack open a financial report, it can feel, well, a little intimidating. It often looks just like this. A giant wall of data, a bunch of codes and figures. It's pretty easy to just see this and think, nope, not for me.
But here's the thing. Inside that wall of data, there's a real story. A story about growth, about challenges, and about success. The real question is, how do you actually read it? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. Think of this as a little investigation, and together, we're going to crack this case.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by just decoding the basics. Then, we'll measure their growth, take a look at the profit picture, give them a quick financial health check, and then at the end, we'll deliver our final verdict on what these numbers are really telling us.
Okay, so every investigation needs a subject, right? Ours is Bombay Super Hybrid Seeds Limited. And just like the name says, they're in the business of making and processing agricultural seeds.
So what even is a financial report? Honestly, the simplest way to think about it is like a report card for a business. It tells us how they're doing, how much money they're making, and whether they're in good financial shape or not.
Now that we know who we're looking at, let's get to the really interesting part, tracking their growth. In the world of finance, you always start at the top line, which is just a fancy way of saying how much money is the company actually bringing in from sales.
The official term you'll see is revenue from operations, but you can totally just think of it as the company's total paycheck before any of the bills get paid. It's just the raw amount of cash they earned from selling what they sell, in this case, seeds.
And this slide, wow, it tells a really powerful story just at a glance. We're looking at the money they brought in during the first half of fiscal year 2022 and comparing it to the first half of fiscal 2025. Back in 22, it was about 101 crores. Fast forward to 25, and that number has shot up to 185 crores. That is a serious jump.
Just how big of a jump are we talking? Over 80%. An 80% increase in revenue in just a few years shows some incredibly strong growth. People are clearly buying a lot more of their seeds. But, and this is a big but, that's only half the story.
So here's the crucial part. A big paycheck is great. We all love that. But what really matters is what you actually get to keep after you pay all your bills. A company can have massive sales, but if it's spending even more, then it's not actually making any money.
And that brings us to our next question. With all this new money coming in the door, where is it all going? To figure that out, we've got to look at their expenses. And this chart breaks it down for us perfectly. The two biggest slices of the pie, making up almost 90% of their costs, are purchases of stock and changes in inventories. And for a seed company, that makes perfect sense, right? Their main costs are going to be buying the seeds and managing all the seeds they have in stock. So after you subtract all those costs from the revenue, you get to what is probably the most important number of all, profit after tax. You've probably heard people talk about the bottom line. Well, this is it. It's the pure profit the company made, which they can then use to grow the business or give back to the owners. And here is where the story gets even better. Remember how revenue grew by 80%? Well, check this out. Their profit more than doubled in the same period. It went from 6.4 crores to 13.2 crores. This tells us they're not just selling more stuff, they're actually getting more efficient and more profitable as they grow. And that is a huge win. Okay, so we've seen fantastic growth in sales and even more amazing growth in profits. But a truly healthy company needs more than just growth, it needs a stable foundation. So for our next step, it's time for a quick financial health check.
For this, we look at something called the balance sheet, which at its core is just a comparison of two things, assets and liabilities. To put it simply, assets are all the valuable stuff the company owns, and liabilities are everything the company owes to other people. So let's look at their balance sheet from September 2024. The picture here is crystal clear. They have total assets worth around 162 crores, and on the other side of the equation, their total liabilities are just 71 crores.
You really don't need to be a financial analyst to see what this means. When what you own is worth more than double what you owe, you're in a very strong and stable position. Bombay Seeds passes this health check with flying colors.
Okay, team, we've gathered all the clues, we've looked at the revenue, we've looked at the profits, and we've checked the overall financial health. Now it's time to put it all together and deliver our final verdict. So what did we find out? First, incredible top-line growth, with sales up by over 80%. Second, even more impressive bottom-line growth, with profits more than doubling. And third, a rock-solid balance sheet that shows this company is financially very healthy.
This summary table really puts our key findings right next to each other. That massive jump in revenue and profit is the main event here. Now, you might notice one number that went down, the EPS, or earnings per share. This is not a sign of trouble at all. It's because the company split its shares. Think of it like taking a pizza and cutting it into way more slices. Each slice is smaller, so you get a lower EPS, but the total amount of pizza, the total profit, has actually grown by a whole lot. That massive profit growth is the real story. So if we had to boil our whole investigation down into just one sentence, this would be it. The numbers we've pulled out of that complex report tell a clear and really powerful story. This is a company that's seeing rapid growth and is building a very strong financial foundation.
And that leaves us with just one final, forward-looking question. They've clearly managed to cultivate some very impressive results so far. The story and the numbers is a story of success. The only question now is, what will they grow next?